Headlines. An anxious wait. South Korean nationals in the coronavirus-hit city of Wuhan are told their flights home have been delayed until further notice. Several hundred of them are nervously waiting to leave a city on lockdown. A global health emergency will find out in the coming hours as the WHO will decide on whether to categorize the outbreak as such. The decision is being closely watched as the number of confirmed cases swell to new heights. Plus, the long goodbye is almost over. Joy and tears in Brussels as the European Parliament votes overwhelmingly to back British Prime Minister Boris Johnson's Brexit deal. The UK bids farewell to the EU on Friday. So let's start with our continuing coverage of the coronavirus outbreak. South Korea's plan to fly out its nationals from the Chinese city of Wuhan, the epicenter of the outbreak, has been put on hold. 2 chartered flights were initially scheduled to evacuate some 700 South Koreans from the city on Thursday and Friday, with the first flight to leave this morning. But the South Korean Consulate General in Wuhan notified the nationals of a change in plan in the wee hours of Thursday, saying the Chinese government made some alterations to flying permits and advised them to wait until further notice. Seoul's foreign ministry says it's coordinating with the Chinese government and local airlines to evacuate the South Koreans as soon as possible. However, it's unclear at this point whether it will be later in the day or another day. Once back in South Korea, they'll be quarantined at a secure location. Now, to give you some idea of the seriousness of the new coronavirus, the confirmed cases have now outnumbered that of the 2003 SARS outbreak, and all within the matter of a few weeks. For more on this, our Che Jong-yoon is on the line. Jong-yoon, it looks like this outbreak is here to stay, at least for some more time to come.
Right. So the new type of coronavirus that first sprouted up in the Chinese city of Wuhan late last month continues to claim more victims. As of Thursday, the death toll in China tops 170, and the total number of confirmed cases came to nearly 8,000, an infection rate much faster than the outbreak of SARS, which had around 5,300 confirmed cases in 2003. As the virus continues to spread quickly, the World Health Organization has advised China to test everyone leaving the country. WHO suggests China check for symptoms of high fever or coughs among those departing. With the cases related human-to-human transmission increasing, the WHO will decide on whether to announce a global emergency within the next 24 hours. Global emergencies are declared when a disease or virus spreads across borders and is considered to be putting other countries' public health in danger. Once in place, relevant regions undergo thorough investigations along with restrictions on travel and trade.
Now, a number of countries have sent chartered planes to retrieve their nationals from Wuhan. What do we know about that so far, and what are they doing to ensure these people don't spread the virus when they get back to their home countries?
Well, some 200 U.S. citizens who are in Wuhan arrived at an air reserve base some 90 kilometers away from Los Angeles on Wednesday morning local time. All of them underwent medical tests twice in China, and none had symptoms of pneumonia. But as the incubation period of the coronavirus lasts 2 weeks, the passengers will be examined once again in California and will be put into emergency shelters at the airbase for 3 days to 2 weeks. Meanwhile, Japan also brought out some 200 nationals, of which 13 had fevers and coughs. According to Kyodo News, 2 people, men in their 40s and 50s, were diagnosed with pneumonia, but their symptoms were relatively trivial. People with symptoms were hospitalized while the rest are staying at a hotel in Chiba Prefecture. The authorities tested every passenger for the novel coronavirus except for 2 people who refused the test. Japan will establish a health follow-up center and will watch for symptoms in the evacuees via phone and email. That's all I have for now, but I'll be back with more updates in our later newscast.
Okay, Jong-yoon, thank you very much for that comprehensive report there. Now, North Korea, which, as we all know, is a country which lacks facilities, medical supplies, and even the most basic of infrastructure, is also on high alert due to the coronavirus. The regime has said it will not allow any foreigners in until further notice. The North is also regularly releasing reports about the virus and how to prevent its spread. Oh Jung-hee has this report.
In fear of the rapidly spreading new coronavirus that originated from Wuhan, China, North Korea has stopped issuing visas for foreigners. Seoul's Yonhap News Agency reported Wednesday that the North Korean consulate in Tandong, a Chinese city on the border with the North, has decided not to issue visas for foreigners. This as Tandong is seeing a growing number of coronavirus patients, hitting 5 as of Tuesday. The North is looking to completely block the inflow of foreigners and thereby halt the spread of the deadly virus. The regime suspended group tours of overseas tourists last week. The North is in a complete battle against the new virus. Its state media have continuously released reports that the North is now running a national emergency quarantine system. On Thursday, the North's ruling party newspaper, Dodong-sinmun, went as far as to say that preventing the spread of the epidemic decides the regime's fate. It also called on all bodies within the ruling party to support the monitoring of developments and preparation of the necessary medicine. It is not known whether there are any confirmed pneumonia patients in the North. Oh Jung-hee, Arirang News.
Now, researchers in Hong Kong are reportedly developing a vaccine in an attempt to stamp out the coronavirus before it spreads much further. According to the South China Morning Post, a team at the University of Hong Kong have been working around the clock on a vaccine. The effectiveness of the drugs could be verified within a matter of weeks. The team managed to isolate the virus strain from the city-state's first confirmed patient. However, it could take months of animal trials to prove the vaccine's effectiveness before it can be used on humans. Now, in other news, the US Federal Reserve has left interest rates unchanged and maintained a wait-and-see stance after wrapping up its first meeting of 2020. Lee Seung-jae reports.
The Federal Reserve held its benchmark interest rate steady on Wednesday after all 10 members of the Fed's rate-setting committee voted in favor of it. The benchmark funds rate remains in a range between 1.5% to 1.75%, where it has been since the latter part of last year. It marks the second straight meeting the Fed has stood pat on rates after 3 consecutive reductions in 2019. The Fed's statement signaled a mixed assessment of the U.S. economic outlook. It described consumer spending as moderate, which is a downgrade from strong in December, adding that business investment is still weak. Fed officials say maintaining the interest rate would help to bring inflation closer to the Fed's 2% target after it fell short of that goal last year. Fed Chairman Jerome Powell said during his post-meeting news conference on Wednesday that he's not satisfied with the inflation running below 2%. Powell also said that the Fed is monitoring a number of potential risks, including the coronavirus outbreak in China. Lee Seung-jae, Arirang News.
Britain will finally leave the EU on Friday, ending a 3-year-plus back and forth that has raged ever since the British people voted in a national referendum to leave the bloc and go it alone. For more on this and other news from around the world, let's turn to our Yoon Jung-min. Jung-min, tell us more about this vote. It was basically a foregone conclusion. And more importantly, what happens now?
Right, Mark. EU member states have bid farewell to the UK in their final vote for Brexit at the EU's Parliament in Brussels, some showing joy, others sadness. During a plenary session on Wednesday, of the 683 MEPs who voted, 621 voted in favor of the bill, 49 against. The deal was passed following the UK government's backing last week. Britain will officially leave the EU at 11 p.m. GMT this Friday, becoming the first member to leave the bloc after its 47 years as a member. When it leaves, the number of member states in the EU will tick down to 27. While saying goodbye to the UK, the president of the European Commission, Ursula von der Leyen, emphasized fairness ahead of the trade negotiations lying ahead of them when it comes to access to their single market with zero tariffs. Take a look.
But the precondition is that European and British businesses continue to compete on a level playing field. We will certainly not expose our companies to unfair competition. We will always love you and we will never be far. Long live Europe.
After January 31st, both sides will embark on a transition period this year to set their future relationship. Until then, Britain will remain within the EU's rules and economic arrangements. It's going to be a grind when you think of the tight timetable with only 11 months available for trade negotiations. The EU is preparing for a no-deal contingency plan as experts have raised the possibility that the talks could fall apart. However, British Prime Minister Boris Johnson has been making it clear that regardless, there will be no extension of the transition period. U.S. President Donald Trump has signed into law a new North American trade agreement touting his accomplishments for the American agriculture industry. At a ceremony at the White House on Wednesday, President Trump said they are finally ending the, quote, NAFTA nightmare, and called the USMCA the most significant and balanced trade agreement in history. The USMCA replaces the 26-year-old NAFTA, renewing rules on automobile transactions, e-commerce, and more. U.S. media say the agreement is likely to give President Trump a boost in his bid for re-election this year. No key Democrats who helped pass the deal in the Congress were at the ceremony. The European Union has unveiled its security guidelines for 5G networks, which do not specifically call for a ban on Chinese tech giant Huawei. The EU's Executive Commission on Wednesday recommended blocking high-risk suppliers from critical and sensitive parts of the network, but no companies were mentioned by name. It will be up to individual countries to decide what kind of equipment they use and how. The EU's outline comes just a day after Britain partially allowed Huawei to set up its 5G network. U.S. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo, who was in London on Wednesday, called for the UK to reconsider its decision, saying using Huawei creates real risk.
Samsung Electronics saw its operating profits drop on year in the fourth quarter of 2019. According to its finalized earnings report on Thursday, the South Korean tech giant posted operating profits of some $4.4 billion in the October to December period. That's down 33.7% on year, but sales edged up slightly over 1%. Weak profits from the display sector contributed most to the drop. Samsung's operating profit in 2019 as a whole slid almost 53% on year to $23.5 billion. That's the lowest since 2015. South Korean companies' business outlook in January has edged down. According to the Bank of Korea, the business survey index for all industries came to 75 this month, down a single point compared to December of last year. The reading is below 100, meaning companies are more pessimistic than optimistic about the local economy. The index for manufacturing rose 2 points on months to 76, thanks to a stronger performance in the semiconductor sector, but the index for non-manufacturing slumped 5 points to 73. South Korea made history in 2019 by breaking into the world's top 4 countries in terms of venture investment in comparison to national GDP. In addition to that, around 40% of the more than $3 billion was funneled into businesses in South Korea's future technology sector. Hong Yu reports.
For the first time ever, South Korea gained a spot in the top 4 in terms of venture investment against GDP, with investment in venture companies in 2019 totaling over $3 billion. Topping the list was the US, followed by Israel and China. The Ministry of SMEs and Startups announced on Wednesday that investment in venture companies increased by 25% a year. The number of companies that have benefited from this investment also increased by 15% a year. On average, each company received almost $170,000 more than in 2018. The number of companies that attracted big investments worth more than $8.5 million rose by more than 35% a year to 68. 22 companies each managed to attract around $17 million of investment. And for the first time ever, there was a company that lured in more than $70 million of investment. The biotech company called D&D Pharmatech is researching and developing a cure for Parkinson's disease. Business investment grew rapidly for companies in the fourth industrial revolution sector, such as healthcare, artificial intelligence, and big data. It accounted for up to 40% of total venture investment. The ministry says it will announce a series of measures to boost angel investment and K-unicorn projects to further accelerate the venture investment boom. They added that the lower laws of the Venture Investment Promotion Act will also be enacted as soon as possible to solidify the foundation of the venture investment ecosystem. Hong Yu, Arirang News.
The South Korean government will provide tourism startup companies with some $15 million in financial aid this year. This pledge was made as government officials and venture company executives discussed ways on Wednesday to further develop the sector. Kan Hyang-woo reports.
Tourism startup Unique Good Company was founded in October 2017. The startup received a Minister's Award for its extensive growth in 2019. The Unique Good Company's smartphone application lets its users play games in real life. Now this one, for instance, lets you try to solve a mystery puzzle in a small office. The name of the application is Real World and has about 130,000 users. Using augmented reality and ICT, the startup has developed tourism games in major tourist areas in South Korea, such as Busan and Jeonju.
Real World combines immersive technology with artificial intelligence and the Internet of Things, so it's more popular with the younger generation in their 20s and 30s.
The Unique Good Company is one of the 8 startups that met with the Ministry of Culture, Sports and Tourism and the Korea Tourism Organization in Seoul on Wednesday. They discussed what kind of support measures are needed and which restrictions need to be eased in order to maximize the capabilities of private entities.
The government will fully nurture tourism ventures in SMEs so that they can become global businesses or even unicorn companies.
The South Korean government plans to inject $15 million into the industry to help tourism startups. The financial aid will help with research and development projects, management education, as well as promotion and marketing. With such government support for startups and the tourism industry, South Korea hopes to achieve the goal of attracting 20 million foreign visitors this year. Kanyo, Arirang News.
Now, Seoul designated certain areas as green traffic zones last year, banning the most heavily polluting vehicles. This is all part of efforts to make the South Korean capital greener and just an overall nicer place to live in, and to ensure the residents aren't inconvenienced or have trouble commuting to work and whatnot. New bus routes have been set up. Kim Bo-kyung has this report.
27 buses on 4 new bus routes began carrying passengers on Wednesday morning. The buses will go around the 2 districts, Jongno-gu and Jung-gu, where grade 5 emissions vehicles are banned.
As the most polluting cars were banned from running in the middle of the city, some people thought it was inconvenient. That is why we made the new bus routes. Since we made the routes based on bus, taxi, and bicycle data, we are expecting lots of passengers.
Buses on these new routes will be a new addition for people in this district. They cost half the capital's regular bus fare, just 50 cents. And people can ride the same bus again without paying an additional fare.
People don't have to pay an extra fee if they use the bus more than once within a 30-minute period. They can transfer up to 4 times for free. To cover the lower bus fees, the city will use the fines drivers pay for using Grade 5 emissions vehicles. Those fines are about $200 for each offense.
I think it's a great idea to have bus routes going around the city. I think the routes will boost tourism.
I think having buses instead of Grade 5 emissions vehicles inside the 4 main gates of Old Seoul will reduce pollution.
Bus number 1 will start from Seoul Station, go around Gyeongbokgung and Changdeokgung Palace, then return to the station. Bus number 2 starts from Namsan Seoul Tower and stops at Chungmuro and Dongguk University Station. Bus 3 stops at City Hall, Insadong and Myeongdong. And bus number 4 will start at City Hall and stops by Dongdaemun and Dongdaemun Design Plaza. The buses currently run on compressed natural gas, but by this May, the government plans to replace them with electric buses with low floors so that the disabled can ride them easily. Kim Bo-kyung, Arirang News.
Now, technology is transforming the job market as we know it, with companies here in South Korea increasingly using artificial intelligence in their recruitment processes. Because of this, many job applicants are actually seeking lessons on how to beat the AI algorithms. Park Se-young has this report.
Your next job interview could be with a robot. Employers are experimenting with artificial intelligence to help them find the best workers for their companies. Here in Korea, top conglomerates including SK Innovation and Hyundai Engineering and Construction are among a growing number of companies applying AI to the hiring process. And according to the Korea Economic Research Institute, nearly a quarter of the top 131 corporations in the country currently use or plan to use AI in hiring. While this may help businesses whittle down their piles of job applications, the AI algorithms have become a new source of frustration for job seekers.
Job seekers are desperate enough to exaggerate their capabilities in order to have employers take another look at them. But you can't trick AI. As a job seeker, I think I'll feel hopeless if AI interviews are made popular and the majority of companies use them.
The interviewees get their verbal responses and facial expressions deconstructed and analyzed by the AI algorithm. One program assesses 37 different capabilities of a job applicant, including their subconscious behavior.
We believe the actual performance or competency of the applicants cannot be properly assessed when they're deliberately thinking, responding, and acting during interviews. We want to see how the applicants subconsciously react and deal with situations.
The increasing prevalence of AI in the hiring process has gotten job seekers turning to cram schools to prepare for interviews with robots. Job applicants learn how to answer interview questions as well as to maintain their composure and positive facial expressions. But there are worries that all this adds to the expense and workload of an already tough job search process. Park Se-young, Arirang News.
Good morning. We have been enjoying mid-March lake temperatures for the past few days, and it's shaping up to be another mild day today, as daily highs will range between 7 and 11 degrees Celsius in most parts with some cloud coverage. Meanwhile, Jeju and some eastern regions will see 5 to 10 millimeters of rain for most of the day, while the east coast will see 10 centimeters more snowfall. Mountainous regions in Gangwon-do and Gyeongsang-pukdo provinces could see 1 to 5 centimeters into Friday. In fact, heavy snow advisories have been issued in mountainous regions of Gangwon-do and heavy snow warning for Jeju Island, so be extra careful. We will have a mild end to January, but do expect a colder start to February. Next week, we'll see bone-chilling temperatures with lows nearing -10 degrees Celsius and highs close to freezing mark here in Seoul. That's Korea for you, and here's the international weather for viewers around the world.
Well, that's all we have for now. Stay tuned to Arirang TV. Our next newscast is at noon Korea time. So until then, goodbye.
Shinsanlo is also called 열구자탄, which literally means a soup that makes a mouth happy.